So Birchbox is, if anyone doesn't know what it is, we're a beauty retailer. We help women discover, try, learn about and buy the right beauty products for them. And you might find it surprising, but data and personalization are really at the core of what we do. And so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we're organized in data science and analytics, our approach to data science, and if I have time, some takeaways. And essentially the idea of a talk like this is that hopefully by me going through some of this stuff, you'll hear some things that maybe help you in your organizations. Or maybe you'll just think I'm crazy, who knows. So, roles and organization. So Birchbox is about 5 years old. So this is still a fairly young company, and obviously our organization has evolved over time. And today, our org pretty much looks like one functional organization. So there's data science, analytics, and insights, and this is housed together as a functional team. This is obviously not how it started. So originally there were no data scientists. I was the closest thing we had. And then we had one data scientist, we had two, we had some statistical analysts because we were starting to get a whole bunch of data that needed analyzing. And then we got into this situation where every department in the company, they wanted their own statistical analyst. I'm sure you all know how that goes. And so what we worked out was that we decided that we would put all these people together, and this has worked really well for us. It's never going to be a 100% popular decision to organize functionally, but what we've found is that people can learn from each other really well, that the data scientists and the statistical analysts can learn from each other, and that's great, and that it really helps when people are working together and not re-solving the same problem over and over again. So to go through the roles a little bit, data scientist, I sort of thought we sorted this one out about 5 years ago, about what this was, but we really haven't. I feel like every day I turn around and someone's saying to me, oh, my company has 50 data scientists. And what to me they mean is that they have 50 analysts. But so for the purpose of this talk, I will tell you what we see as a data scientist. So we see a data scientist as someone who contributes to product development, essentially. Someone with very specialized skills who helps us deliver our products into market. And so by specialized skills, I essentially mean a PhD or something very much like it, and someone who can write some production code. So not just some MATLAB, but someone who has worked out how to write production code, either on the job or in the past. And we find this very important. So, and by PhD-like skills now, I have been accused of bias here. I do actually have a PhD, so I don't think we're all crazy and stupid. But the thing with this is that if you do have a PhD or you've learnt these types of skills, then one thing that you can do is you can bash your head up against a problem for months on end, and you're not going to get scared off by that. And this can be really useful to have on your team. You can read 40 papers if you need to read 40 papers, and you can construct a new solution to something. And you can understand the math. And we've found this really useful at Birchbox, and I imagine you've found it useful in some of your companies too. And then we embed our data scientists into our product development teams. And this helps them see their ideas go from the very start all the way through to the customer. And then we also have statistical analysts. And our statistical analysts, they also have very specialized skills, but they're largely focused on analytics. Predictive analytics, for example, and they're often specialized to business concerns. So this is how we solve the problem of everyone wanting their own analyst in their own department. We do specialize people towards certain things. So in a company like Birchbox, planning would be an example, marketing, merchandising, these types of things. And then analysts are obviously a more junior version of statistical analyst. And then the final functional speciality we have is data engineering. So like everyone else, we have warehousing concerns, and we find it useful to have a speciality here. And they're actually embedded with our platform engineering team as well as in this broader group. And then the one type of thing that is not embedded in data science analytics and insights, but everyone does rely on to get everything done, is some types of software engineering and some types of systems engineering. So we don't expect our data scientists to be able to produce our new Spark infrastructure, for example. We do not expect them to be able to administrate our Hadoop cluster. This is done by other people on the engineering team. in conjunction with the data scientists. But this has worked well for us so far. Okay, so I don't have time to tell you about all the cool stuff the analysts do at Birchbox tonight, but I will tell you a little bit about what the data scientists do. And so one thing that they work on is what I think about as explicit personalization. And the very first example I have is one of the things that we're most famous for as a company, and this is the box, as we like to call it. So Birchbox has a lot of subscribers, and these subscribers, every month they receive from us a box that is personalized to them. So each of our subscribers has a profile. So if you sign up, you fill out a profile and you tell us things about yourself, like what kind of hair do you have, what kind of skin, these types of things. And then based on that, we send you this box every month. So your profile, it is constraints essentially into a system. There are other constraints in the system. We never send you the same thing twice, for example. Another constraint that we have when we have to solve this problem is in any given month, we have a limited supply of these sample products we can send. This makes the problem hard. And so this turns out, this is an optimization problem. So, and this isn't a problem that we have to solve every month. When we were small, this wasn't so hard. The way we actually work this out is like, this is an Excel spreadsheet. I'm a software engineer, so I kind of like hate Excel. But, you know Excel can be used to do a lot of great things, I'll give you all that. So, and then over time, this was a script, but these days, this is like it's a really complicated process. And we get better and better at it all the time. We're constantly trying to solve it faster so that we can get more things into it, so that we can make it more and more personalized. And we do this with the help of a very nice solver called Garobi. One of the things that we've found really important in this whole process from a customer perspective is because it's really hard when you're doing something so decisive with this type of personalization, right? So this is not some kind of carousel that I'm scrolling through, oh, I like it, I don't like it. When you do something like this and you make a mistake, you personalize something to someone and they don't like it, there's a high cost to that mistake. And so what we've found is that it's very important to involve the customer in the process. Okay, so the profile is one way they're involved in the process. Another way we involve them in the process is we give them some choice. So every month our customers are able to choose one of their samples. This is our highest engagement moment every month. It actually makes the whole problem a little bit more annoying to solve actually, but that's okay. It's very, very popular with the customer base. Another part of this is also helping people understand what to expect. This is, after all, a discovery experience. And so tying the data science into these customer experience notions has been very important to us. We do, of course, make recommendation algorithms of the regular kind. This is one of the fun things our data scientists do. And in retail, that's important. We also work on very core personalized experiences where the entire experience that the customer is personalized, and we see really strong engagement from these types of experiences. And that's been very exciting. But I would say that from a data science perspective, we've only just scratched the surface of what we can do here. And then another type of personalization we focus on is personalization that disappears. So the type that your customer doesn't really notice, but it helps to lift their entire experience. Whoa, that was interesting. Sorry about that. Okay. And so this is where we think about every touch. So how every little touch that you have with the customer matters, and how by making every little touch more personal and more attentive and properly interconnected, you can lift their whole experience with you, you can increase their conversion, and you can just make them happier. So this can be challenging because we often think about all these things as separate, and we often have different systems that manage all these different parts of our process. So if you're a company like Birchbox, you have a brick and mortar store, you have a website, you have apps, you have your social media channels, you have your email channels, you've got data all over the place, and you're touching your customer through all these different things, and you have different people involved in all these different touch points as well. And so it's really easy to start thinking about it separately, but your customer doesn't experience it separately. They experience you as a holistic brand. And so one of the things our data scientists have worked on is helping us be able to track our customer through all these different touch points and then be able to respond to them and be attentive to them as a result. So it was actually our data scientists that built out our very first event tracking system. So this is a standard thing that I hope everyone has where you can see what all your customers are doing through your experience. The very first system we had in production for that was built by data science. It was then later obviously taken over by engineering, but they got it off the ground. And that's the sort of thing that allows us to do very basic things like show we're being attentive, ask the customer were they looking for something, show them products that are popular in a category they might have just looked at. And we see really good conversion from things like this. We also find that showing customers the right message for them, given their current state within the Birchbox universe, is incredibly important. And it was our data scientists that built a system, data science that initially built the system, that lets us do that on the website and in the apps, where we can show them different campaign messages according to their different state. It allows us to target them. So this is what this bottom image is. There's actually 2 different campaigns being shown to the customer in this image. And finally, we've seen a great deal of success by not only showing customers the right message, but showing it to them at the right time. So by combining what we do in data science with our CRM program and moving more and more and more and more of the messages we send our customers over push, over email to triggered, we've seen huge increases in the conversion of those messages. So this is an example of one of the messages that we send. This is quite a simple one, really. So this customer has browsed the website, they have not purchased, and one of our models has predicted that they're relatively likely to purchase. And there's some other criteria that goes into that. And then based on that has sent them this message. This model also has the ability to decide that they should be sent an offer, for example. This is to help people get over the hump of making their very first purchase with us. So a few takeaways. So you can build up your data science practice over time. This is something we did. We did not tackle all those problems all at once. We started doing things very simply to begin with. Our initial recommendation algorithms were written very simply. We didn't start out with all of them on Spark, for example. And like focus, doing things basically, that's been very helpful to us. And then this notion of combining data science and product development and making that work organically, that's proved incredibly important to us over time. The number of instances where we've found that data science got something small, got it into production, we tested it, we found it successful, we were then able to truly productize it in engineering. I can't count them, literally, it's been so many. We've seen so many good results from that. And this is not really about how you run your organizational structure, but a lot to do with the relationships on your team, having really great relationships between data science, product, UX, engineering. This has worked incredibly well for us. And this was my final thought. It's basically, I've been working with data for a long time, and it's this notion of just don't be limited by the data that you have today. And if you run a data science team, don't let them be limited by it. Empower people to go out and get the data that they need to do their jobs. Don't let them just be stuck and unable to gather more data. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.
This was great. The last point in particular was super interesting. So I'm, as a VC, I talk to a lot of very early stage startups. There's always one of the question that comes up. The chicken and egg problem, I guess. Do you hire the data scientist first before you have the data, or do you need the data before you have the data scientist? But you're saying even if you don't have the data, you could possibly go out and try and find all the data sets, and that would be enough for a data scientist to start?
Well, I'd say we hired the data scientists first, to a certain degree. So when our first data scientist came on board, we did have this box personalization problem, which is not a traditional data science problem, by the way. It's an optimization problem. So you might call it operations research, something like that. But we didn't have a lot of data at that point. We had reviews, we had products, but we weren't instrumenting to track all our events. We didn't have views. So there was a lot of data that we were missing, but we hired someone that could write production code. So this is very helpful, and he was actually one of the people that helped us gather more data. So we found that very effective. But I wouldn't hire someone that couldn't go out and be scrappy and get their hands dirty. That person doesn't belong in an early stage startup anyway.
And the other point that you made at the end about having data scientists and engineers work well together, so that's a story I've heard countless times about data scientists being sort of in ivory tower. Some of them by personality, but most of them just because the way the work they need to do requires deep thinking, and so at a very practical level, how do you do that? It's one of the things like easier said than done. How do you integrate everyone and have everyone work together culturally?
Yeah, it's a good question. How to create a great culture is, we could have an entire talk on it. But I think it's important to help people understand each other's different roles and give each other insight into the day-to-day, how they work. So one of the things that we do many things. So we make sure that across the entire technology org, everyone knows what everyone's doing. So the data scientists will come in and present their deeper work as well as their more standard day-to-day work. So for example, that box personalization problem, that's something that a data scientist will talk to the entire tech team about, even if the entire technology team has never even, before this point, heard of mixed integer program, right? So we find that sort of thing helps because there's that sharing. And when you're doing that sort of sharing, the data scientist might say, I find this really hard. I find that I can't work on it all the time because I'm just bashing my head against a brick wall and it's going to take me 3 months to solve this. And so you gain that sort of empathy and that helps. But then the other key for us has been embedding on the agile teams. So our data scientists, for a lot of what they do, they embed with the agile teams. And so that means that they're going to stand up, they're going to iteration planning meetings, they're taking tickets along with everyone else. And so then they also do have a true understanding of what it means to be part of that process. They discuss the designs of new products along with anyone else on that team, and so they really are part of the entire flow.
And they all report into you as CTO?
The lines, yes, they wind their way to me, and so that probably helps too.
Okay, great. Do we have questions? One over there, two.
Hi, I'm just curious how frequently your statisticians might say, how long does it take some of your theories to reach confidence? Because a lot of data science requires a ton of touch points that are conditional. So you need such great volume that it's really hard to actually see an impact.
So is the question about if we're doing an A/B test, for example?
Yeah, or no, it's like multivariate events. So they're dependent on one another. So there's much more than just an A/B test. It's a lot more complex, and for that reason requires a lot more volume. So I'm curious, what statisticians feel about the work of data scientists would be curious about.
Okay, so we don't always get the answers that we want, for example, and that could be due to a lack of data. So sometimes we will examine our data going after a question, and we will find that we really are not getting to an answer. Sometimes when that happens, if we add a little bit more structure to the data, we are then able to see significant results. So some kind of data modeling does help our analysts at times. We do not have a massive data set, obviously. So there are probably things that we miss out on as a result. Does that help answer your question? I feel like I might be missing the point.
Yeah, the ROI of having these very deep, complex models being built, I mean, when do you actually see an impact from them? I know that there are some immediate returns, right? But a data scientist could easily be working on a ton of different things that will not necessarily show significance for a really long time.
So in terms of the products that our data scientists work on, they typically show immediate impact, which we see through A/B tests. So we put out, we were using one of our recommendation algorithms just recently in a catalog sort, which we newly put in, and it showed a 20% lift in conversion on like full-size purchase. So for me, that is a very clear indicator of ROI from their work. But is your question more about like analytics? Sorry. Okay.
You guys can discuss this over
Yeah,
beer.
sorry.
All right, next up.
There are many algorithms for personalization in retail. Could you just speak to your experience with the various algos and what works and what doesn't work, just generally in broad strokes?
Oh, wow. So we've had a fair amount of success with collaborative filtering. That's worked well for us. But we have experimented with a lot of different things, and I think I really can't say one thing over another would be better. It has a lot to do with the exact data that you are using. I think most people that are doing product recommendations are probably just standard product recommendations, are probably doing some sort of collaborative filtering at this point. We've typically experimented with other sorts of things when we're looking at review data or other types of data.
Hi, thanks. So you're very deliberate and specific about the roles and the locations within the organizations that each of these roles has. And it makes me wonder, you obviously develop a lot of software, a lot of logic, a lot of processes internally. Do you have conviction strategically about what you need to have in the organization, what can be outsourced, whether to an outsourced team or to a software platform? What really needs to be inside?
I think it very much depends on where you see like the opportunity for your business. So if we were a vanilla retailer, then I would argue you don't need to build your personalization algorithms in-house. Birchbox is not a vanilla retailer. The fact that we have the subscription gives us a great deal of different data and a very different relationship with our customer. And as such, it would be very difficult for us to take those things off the shelf. And so these decisions are really like business by business, and they come down to that analysis of, is there value for me in building this as a core competency, or is there value for me in actually just taking it off the shelf? And we do take many things off the shelf. So we use, like other people earlier, we use Redshift, we use Looker, we use Pentahost. So we take these things and we utilize them. We use a solver to help us solve this box allocation problem, which we pay for, called Garobi. I would never want to myself build a mixed integer program solver. That would be quite difficult. So we utilize the things that we can, and we focus on what we think should be a core competency for Birchbox.
Great. And the last question of the night.
Hi. So my question is, when you were starting out, what was your data analytics workflow? Were you just pulling data from multiple sources and just throwing them in Excel? And at what point did you guys realize you had to move away from that?
We realized yes, that was our analytics workflow. That is quite fair. So our little story of like how we pulled data was essentially that we trained almost the entire company to use SQL. And that was really quite an achievement. We were pretty impressed with ourselves. And this stopped them from having to ask engineering every 5 minutes what was the number. This was particularly the case after some of our internal systems, like third-party systems, just stopped working for them. We found this much more difficult when we acquired a company in Europe and we tried to teach them remotely the same thing. This was not a popular move. But it was painful because people were doing that. They were pulling it out of SQL, they were transferring it into Excel, and we had to buy them these like big MacBooks, and the MacBooks running out of memory, and the whole thing was terrible. And so ever since then, obviously we've been trying to build up a data warehouse and give everyone the tools that they need, because that's not the way you want to run your business. But standard startup, you know, there's a lot going on and limited resources, and we're just moving as fast as we can. Yeah.
All right, great. On that note, thank you very much.